Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here with us on our third session of Recentering the ELA ELD Framework. We will be talking about designated and integrated ELD and multilingual programs today. We have a lot of amazing people lined up for you. My name is Bonnie Garcia, Statewide Literacy Co-Director. And I'll be introducing everyone who's going to be on our panel today in just a second. First, I want to go over the purpose and goals of this webinar and the webinar series in general, and that is to recenter the ELA ELD framework as our primary guide for language and literacy policy and practice. Also, sharing knowledge about what the key content is in the ELA and ELD framework, as well as establishing a foundation for successful and sustained implementation of the practices and systems promoted in the ELA ELD framework. I'm going to launch a quick poll right now. And the question for this poll, as soon as I find it, is going to be who is joining us today. We want to know from all of you who is here. So I'm launching it and I'm going to wait until I get to 80%, and I know we can get there. So we want to know who's in our audience so we know who we're talking to. So I see a lot of classroom teachers, paraprofessionals, instructional coaches, school district administrators, county office, higher education, educational organizations, I see somebody from a librarian or specialist, librarian or specialist. So the options are classroom teacher or paraprofessional, librarian or specialist, family or community member, instructional coach, school or district administrator, county office, higher education or educational organization, CDE or other state agency, policymaker, or other. So I'm going to end the poll because we are at a really high percentage above the 80% that I wanted, which thank you very, very much. Let me go ahead and share the results with you. So you'll see that 21% school administrators, our second highest number is 19% with classroom teachers and paraprofessionals. Then we have instructional coaches, a lot of important players in this work here today. So thank you for being here with us today. I'm gonna clean my window up so I can keep scrolling through. So for today, we are going to be starting off with our welcome and opening remarks, moving into key policies and initiatives, then into integrated and designated ELD. What is that and how does that work? ELA, ELD framework exploration. So you're going to get some time to actually dig into some documents today and do a little bit of reflecting. Also, multilingual programs, and then we'll do closing and next steps. You'll notice that at the bottom of your screen, you have a Q&A or in that little bar. There you can go ahead and type in any answer or any questions that you might have during the program, and we will get to them as best as possible. We might need to wait until the very end to address some of these questions, but feel free to add those questions in there, and we do take a look at those after the fact as well. So it's helpful to us. Thank you. The outcomes that we're looking for today, or that we're hoping to meet today, is to identify the state initiatives that support high quality ELD and multilingual education, understanding how the integrated and designated ELD promote equity, identifying places in the ELA ELD framework that guide effective instruction for multilingual and English learner students, understanding the goals for and the status of multilingual education in California, as well as identifying next steps to dive deeper into the ELA ELD framework. As I said, there's going to be a lot of information shared today, and then we're going to have an opportunity to dig into some documents. Dr. Yop is going to walk you through that, and we'll be sharing links when we get to that point. Before we get there, though, to be prepared for that time, we ask that during the session, you think about the following questions and take notes as needed. So what is resonating with you? Are you excited? What are you excited to hear? What are some key points that everyone you work with should know about? And or what questions do you have? So I want to again introduce Dr. Hallie Yop, Dr. Pam Speecher, Nancy Brenelson, myself, Dr. Hallie Yop, Dr. Speecher, and Nancy Brenelson. We're all authors of the ELA ELD Framework. So you're going to hear it right from the authors today. Also here are our special guests. We have Alicia Moreno Ramirez, who is the Director of Multilingual Support Division at CDE. With her is Gina Garcia Smith, who is an Education Programs Consultant in the Multilingual Support Division at CDE. And then we have GQ Zamini, Administrator, Language Policy and Leadership Office at CDE. So thank you all for being here today and sharing your knowledge. I am now have the privilege to turn it over to Nancy Brenelson. And Nancy, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So my question, Miss Nancy, is how do current state policies and initiatives promote high quality, comprehensive ELD and multilingual programs?
Thank you. Let's take a look. First and foremost, the ELA ELD framework is our primary guidance for literacy and for integrated and designated ELD. It promotes a comprehensive approach that must include all of the following: all the California ELA literacy standards and the California ELD standards. Our framework is unique in the country in that we address both ELA literacy and ELD in the same document. And of course, all of that applies to other content areas. And so a comprehensive approach addresses how we promote literacy and language development in every discipline. You all are aware of the 5 themes of the framework that we've used to bring together the 2 sets of standards, the cross-cutting themes, the foundational skills, meaning making, language development, effective expression, and content knowledge. Both integrated ELD and designated ELD. As Pam Speecher likes to say, both and you'll hear more about that in a bit. And evidence-based practices and materials, the science of literacy, of reading, writing, learning, and development. Next. You'll recognize this graphic that we introduced to you 2 webinars ago in the framework. It is the circles of implementation, or our conceptual model for literacy, with the goals for our students in the outer ring, the context in which instruction is to take place in that field in the back. In the center and at the heart are the standards for ELA literacy, addressing reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language, along with the ELD standards and how those are really paired together across all disciplines. And as I indicated before, united by the 5 themes. Next. Just a bit of history here. To really look at where we are with policy. Beginning in 2010, the state board approved the Common Core State Standards for ELA literacy, and 2012, the California ELD standards. The framework that we're discussing today was approved in 2014. Additional work has been done since the framework. The dyslexia guidelines were published in 2017, and the state board approved the English Learner Roadmap in 2017. And we had a proposition supporting that as well. And you may or may not realize that the requirement for designated and integrated ELD is included in Title V of the California Code of Regulations, which were adopted in 2018. Next. So with that backdrop of solid policy behind us, where are we today? A few years ago, the board adopted our California Comprehensive State Literacy Plan, reflecting in large part the framework that we're discussing today, as well as the entire system of support that we envision for all children in California, the whole child, all of the supports that are required. And today, of special note, students who are multilingual and those identified officially as English learners. In 2022, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing adopted new standards, new accreditation standards for literacy, and new teaching performance expectations that teacher candidates are being held to account for in terms of what they know and are able to do in classrooms. So we continue this development of literacy in not only what we're expecting in TK through grade 12, but also in teacher preparation. 2024, we are anticipating new preschool and transitional kindergarten learning foundations. We've had preschool learning foundations. They're now expanded to include transitional kindergarten. And in fact, they will be the learning foundations, the expectations for both preschool and transitional kindergarten. Another project that Bonnie and I and all of this team here are working on is a new literacy roadmap, which is intended to bring together all of these initiatives and these policy documents for a coherent and comprehensive framework for literacy in the state and with practical guidance for educators. Hard on the heels of that document, which we plan to have finished before the end of this school year, will be the new P3 learning progressions in 2025. And finally, the new literacy performance assessment replacing RECA will be operational in July of 2025. All of this is to show that this is a comprehensive effort to be clear about our vision for literacy and biliteracy, for multilingualism in this state, and that all of these policy initiatives, as well as a number of grant programs, which I've not listed for you, are all intended to support. And with that introduction, I will turn it back to Bonnie so that we can get into the meat of this content around ELD and multilingual programming.
Thank you, Nancy. That was really helpful. I especially found the point on about Title V and where to find that language in the law really interesting. I am now going to reintroduce our author, one of the authors of the framework, Dr. Pam Speecher. And I have a question for her. We're going to be going over comprehensive, ELD, integrated, and designated. So she's going to give us a lot of really good information about what that is and what that looks like. So Pam, my question for you, and I don't see you up on the screen yet, so I hope you can. There you are.
Can you see me?
Yes, I see you now.
Okay, good.
What guidance does the ELA ELD framework provide for a comprehensive language and literacy development for English learner identified students?
It's a great question. Thanks, Bonnie. And thank you, Nancy, for establishing the historical context and providing such an enticing teaser for what's coming soon. Feels like a movie trailer coming soon to a theater near you. It is such an exciting time to be in California right now. I'm so proud of our state and of all of the educators, teachers, administrators, preschool providers, policymakers, families, students in California, because we're doing amazing things, leading the nation in doing what's right for our children and youth. So I'm going to try to answer that question in the time that I have. Obviously, there will be details that I will not be able to address, but that's what the ELA ELD framework is for. So I invite you to find all of the answers in there. So thank you most of all for joining us today, all of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here and excited to be taking this journey with you. So I am going to be sharing with you some really important and key information about California's approach to comprehensive English language development, or ELD. And this is information that is important for all of us to have a shared understanding about, so that we can link arms and move along the path together. But first, I do want to invite you to, because I know that it's a little bit late in the day, and some of you, maybe you were teaching all day, so you're probably a little tired. So I want to invite you, we can't see you. I want to invite you to take notes, first of all, on anything that's resonating with you, anything you're excited about, topics you think other people should know about, questions you have, etc. And also, please give yourself permission to doodle, stand up, lie down, do a little dance, whatever you need to do, basically, to feel like you can process the information, because there's going to be a lot of information, and feel engaged. And please do use the Q&A to ask us questions. So in California, next slide, thanks Bonnie. In California, we have what we call, as Bonnie mentioned, a comprehensive approach to ELD. And it includes both integrated and designated ELD. As Nancy said, I almost had t-shirts made that said both and, because it's not a choice. You can't choose integrated or designated ELD. It's a package. We have to be focusing on this comprehensive approach that includes both. And on this slide, you can see how integrated and designated ELD are defined in Chapter 2 of the ELA ELD Framework. So integrated ELD is defined as all teachers who are serving EL-identified students are using the California ELD standards, the actual standards, not just strategies, the actual standards, alongside content standards in ELA, math, science, history, social studies, arts, health education, etc., to make sure that the learning strengths of our EL-identified students are recognized and that their learning needs are being met. And that's every day, all year. This is a really critical part of core instruction for our EL-identified students. So again, this means that integrated ELD is a shared responsibility of all teachers, administrators, specialists, support staff, and any other school and district staff responsible for EL-identified students. And also, because you see that the ELD standards are specifically and really explicitly in the definition, it really means that everyone needs to have a really solid and deep understanding of the ELD standards, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, because you aren't providing integrated ELD instruction or designated ELD instruction. Your curriculum is not being responsive and assessment is not being responsive if all of that is not firmly grounded in the ELD standards. Designated ELD is directly connected to integrated ELD and therefore connected to content learning. Designated ELD, as you can see on the slide, is defined as teachers using the California ELD standards as the focal standards. Really the kind of zooming in on these ELD standards that are being used during a protected time during the regular school day in ways that build into and from that content instruction. In other words, designated ELD should really amplify the critical language skills and knowledge that EL-identified students really need to be successful in their academic content learning. So both integrated and designated ELD are a key part of EL-identified students' core curriculum and Tier 1 instruction. This is Tier 1 instruction, both integrated and designated ELD. So on the next slide, There are some very clear, direct, and previous slide, Bonnie, at the integrated ELD slide. There's some very clear statements about what integrated ELD is and is not. So as I mentioned, I'm just kind of maybe reiterating some things, but it's just really important that we're all clear so we can move forward together. So remember that integrated ELD is all teachers, all classrooms. It's using content standards with ELD standards. It's really providing equitable access across the content areas for EL identified students. It's amplifying the language needed for academic success, and it's really demystifying how English works in texts and tasks. And I'll be talking more about that in just a moment. It is not one person's job. Integrated ELD in general is not the job of the ELD teacher at your school. It's everybody's responsibility. It's not optional. It's required. It's in ed code, so it's the law, and it's just a moral imperative too. I mean, we just do right by our children and youth in California, and this is one way to do that. It's not something extra, and it's not just strategies. So remember, you're not doing integrated ELD if you're not really digging deeply into the ELD standards. You can't identify which ELD standards you're addressing. So on the next slide, similarly, here are some very clear statements about designated ELD, what it is and what it's not. It also is core instruction provided to all EL students. It's really that strategic, specialized, zoomed in, precious instructional time that we are obliged to provide for our students so that they can progress as expected and as we want them to. A qualified teacher needs to be providing it. It's protected time. So it's whenever it's being provided, this is protected time. It's not integrated ELD. It's a separate time. It's really customized to students' English language proficiency. So for example, if you're in a high school and your designated ELD classes, because sometimes they're classes, have EL identified students at English language proficiency levels everywhere from newcomer to bridging, that's not what we want to see, because we can't really zoom in and provide that specialized instruction if we have a lot of different proficiency levels. Our goal, the gold standard, is to really have those students at the same proficiency levels together so we can focus. It's prioritizing specific ELD standards as the focal standards. As I said, it's directly connected to content instruction. And it's really a deeper dive into how English works in texts and tasks. So in integrated ELD, we are diving into that. But this is a really deep dive so that our students are empowered with the language that they need to be successful. It's not optional, just like integrated ELD is not optional. It's not isolated from content. It's not a separate curriculum. So any, designated ELD should not be like a separate course that has a completely separate curriculum. It has to be connected to what students are doing the rest of the day, at least to one content area to begin with. And it's not intervention. So this is tier 1 instruction. It's not intervention. It's part of our EL identified students' normal educational program, because if you're learning English as an additional language, this is part of what you need to learn. And it's not prescriptive. How designated ELD is provided will really depend on your students, your EL identified students, and their particular linguistic and academic profiles. And that's why sometimes it gets frustrating, because it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. It does take some creativity because it's complex. Next slide, please. Okay, so now that we all have the nuts and bolts and facts about integrated and designated ELD, I do want to assure you that the good news is that you've not been left on your own out in the wilderness to figure all of this out on your own. So in order to implement this comprehensive approach, we've provided a lot of guidance in the ELA-ELD framework to help you. Nancy shared earlier that there are a lot of other resources too that are out there, and policies and initiatives to support. But the ELA-ELD framework is really where we want to go first. It's over 1,000 pages long, and that's because we don't expect you to read it in one sitting. We expect folks to go back and use it over time to get better and better, continuously improve the way we do things. There are lots of tools and templates and examples to support your local implementation. They're even kind of like little mini lesson plans, I like to call them. So this figure is just one of those resources you'll find. And you'll find this particular figure repeated throughout the framework. It's almost in every chapter. And the reason is because we really want you to use it. In the figure, you'll find framing questions. So things to consider that we all must consider to guide instructional planning for ELA, for all students, first of all, and then also for EL identified students. And these questions are really critical in the planning phase, but also in the reflecting on instruction phase. So in the left hand column, you'll see questions that are critical for planning instruction for all students. Because remember, the ELD framework is for all students, every single TK through 12th grade student in California. So these are questions we would consider for all students. What are my, you can see some of the examples, and some of them that are kind of rise to the top for me are, what are my learning targets for the lesson? What do I want students to know and be able to do by the end of the lesson? And how is everything that I'm doing in the lesson working toward that learning target? Which ELA literacy standards am I addressing? What am I going for here? And how can the standards actually help me focus my instruction? And what types of scaffolding, accommodations, or modifications do I need to bake into the lesson to make sure that it's truly inclusive for every student? So we know that the instructional materials that we've provided, they're a starting point. And we also know that we have to do some additional planning to make sure that our materials are being responsive for every single student that comes to us, that we're serving. So these are some questions to help modify, adapt, enhance, amplify the lessons that we already have. Create new lessons. So in the right-hand column, you'll see these are additional framing questions for teachers of any EL identified students. Some of the questions are, what can students already do in the English language? Where can I meet them where they are? And where are they on the ELD continuum? And which ELD standards will really help amplify the content standards I'm addressing? And which will help me provide meaningful access to the academic content. So if I were a classroom teacher or an instructional coach or even an administrator, I post this figure wherever I do my lesson planning, so I can regularly refer to it, almost like success criteria. Like, am I asking this question? Am I asking that question? Because it's a lot. This is complex teaching that we're talking about. Next slide, Bonnie, please. Don't worry. That's not the only thing that we've provided to you. We've provided much more than this one figure to support your implementation of comprehensive ELD. There's a plethora of examples, scenarios, and charts and explanations throughout the framework. And in the TK through 12th grade integrated and designated ELD vignettes, which I invite everybody to, if you haven't checked out the framework yet, maybe use that as your entry point, I would say. In those vignettes, the reason why I keep talking about them, I think I've talked about them, and this is the third webinar I keep promoting. I feel like a broken record or a commercial, but really, these are wonderful tools that you can use because they have explanations of what you might do. They even have like some protocols and tools and charts that you could actually take and use in your classroom right away. And there's stories of what's possible, and there's stories that you'll recognize yourself in also. So today, I am going to zoom in on a very powerful big idea that you'll find across all of the vignettes. And I'm going to use the fifth grade vignettes to illustrate this powerful big idea. So in the fifth grade pair of vignettes, you'll find a story about a fifth grade teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, and his students who are engaged in more integration in an integrated ELA and science unit, where Mr. Rodriguez is also implementing integrated and designated ELD because some of his students are identified as English learners. The reason I'm talking about fifth grade is because it is such a pivotal year for our EL identified students, especially if they've been with us since kindergarten. We really want to make sure that we're doing all we can to support their linguistic and academic progress in that year before they head off into their secondary schooling, if that starts in sixth grade where you are. So the culminating task for all students in Mr. Rodriguez's class is to write a science informational report on an ecosystem students have researched collaboratively. And to support his students in this writing task, in integrated ELD, Mr. Rodriguez is focusing on teaching the students about how science informational reports are structured and how the information is organized. And in designated ELD, with this group of EL identified students, Mr. Rodriguez is going a bit deeper into science informational reports, focusing on language that makes the whole text more cohesive or helps the text hang together. So next slide, please. So this powerful big idea I wanted to share with you is the concept of mentor texts. Yes, the vignettes are a powerful tool, but the powerful idea that I want to share with you is the concept of mentor text. Let's just take a step back and think about what a mentor is. For me, a mentor is a knowledgeable and experienced and trusted person who supports and guides other people's development of knowledge, skills, etc. We all know that teachers are also mentors, right? But mentor texts can also be mentors. Mentor texts are high quality texts that can serve as guides for student writing. They offer a model for students' writing, give them something to aspire to as they are developing as effective writers. As early as transitional kindergarten, actually as early as preschool, we can be using mentor texts. Mentor texts can be professionally written text, like an article or a children's trade book. They can be exemplar text from previous year students. And they can even be written by teachers to intentionally draw students' attention to specific content knowledge, rhetorical concepts, and language. So mentor texts are these high-quality texts that not only help students build their content knowledge of a topic, but they also serve as a teaching tool, or they can serve as a teaching tool if you use them this way, for helping students understand exactly how authors use language to strategically and intentionally achieve their writing goals. And you can help students explore the language in mentor text in many different ways. How the text is organized, how grammatically complex sentences work, unpacking the chunks in them to understand the meanings, but also the structure and kind of the language techniques. There are lots of different ways to use mentor text, depending on what the text affords. In terms of teaching. And this language exploration, which should be fun and game-like, not test-like and torturous, can really place students in a more informed and empowered position to write their own complex texts and comprehend the complex text that they're reading. And that's because language isn't such a secret anymore. When you're exploring language, it's being demystified. So next slide, please. Ideally, the same mentor text is used in both integrated and designated ELD. For example, in Mr. Rodriguez's class, the students, in addition to all the inquiry-based real-world science they're doing and close reading of complex texts and peer-to-peer discussions, Mr. Rodriguez is guiding the students to understand how science informational texts using the mentor text, how they're organized, what goes into each section or stage, etc. And to provide additional and specialized support to his EL identified students on the next slide, in designated ELD, Mr. Rodriguez goes deeper. So Mr. Rodriguez, in his fifth grade classroom, he structures activities where the students explore different specific language in the mentor text that really makes the science informational text cohesive. So the students, with Mr. Rodriguez's guidance, of course, are analyzing the mentor text for text connectives across the text, for words that are referring backward, for nominalization. If you don't know what nominalization is, go look in the ELD standards. There's an explanation about what that is. And, unpacking complex sentences. And so by doing that, the students are really kind of discovering what makes the text cohesive, what language makes it cohesive, and they create a chart so they can remember. And then the chart that they create has meaningful categories of terms that make the text cohesive. And you can see these categories are terms for adding, contrasting, sequencing, etc. So when you explore the integrated and designated ELD vignettes you're interested, I invite you to think about how the mentor texts are being used. And I also challenge you to consider how mentor texts might be used as the next big idea in your particular context to improve educational outcomes for EL students. And just one more thing on the next slide, shifting a bit to the early grades. A lot of teachers have been asking questions specifically about where systematic and explicit foundational skills instruction for EL identified students should be addressed. The ELD framework is very clear that foundational skills instruction should be addressed in ELA. It's part of core instruction, and it also needs to integrate ELD by using Part 3 of the ELD standards in planning. And the way you use Part 3 of the ELD standards is explained in both Chapter 6 of the ELD standards and in the ELD framework in Chapters 3 through 7. Designated ELD really needs to focus on higher order English language skills, especially oral language and language awareness. And if you'd like a bit more guidance on teaching foundational skills to EL identified students in the early grades, I've provided a resource for you that I wrote it, but I have used it extensively in professional learning across the state, and it's firmly grounded in the framework. The framework is there are sections of the framework in the actual paper, so you'll find those direct connections, and you'll find it's kind of like a long vignette that explains what this looks like. And on the final slide, I just wanted to let you know that there are some additional resources. Please, 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 if you haven't seen Chapter 5 of the ELD standards, which explains Part 2 of the ELD standards, learning about how English works, go check that out. Check out the Improving Education for Multilingual and English Learner Students Research to Practice book. It gives you even more information on how schools and districts across the state have been implementing the framework. And then California's Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities has direct connections to the framework. And now it is my pleasure to pass the baton to GQ Zamini, the administrator from the Language Policy and Leadership Office in the Multilingual Support Division at CDE, who will respond to some frequently asked questions about integrated and designated ELD.
Thank you so much, Pam. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We get many questions about ELD from our partners in the field and from families, and today I'm going to share two of the most popular questions that we get. Next slide. Thank you. So the first question we get is designated ELD required as part of the regular school day? And the answer to that is yes, it absolutely is. California Code of Regulations state that designated ELD is instruction provided during a time set aside in the regular school day. As previously mentioned, designated ELD is part of the core curriculum, the standard instructional program for our English learner students, which is taught during the regular school day. Next slide, please. The next question we get is there a minimum number of minutes required for ELD instruction? And the answer is no. There is no set minimum required minutes of ELD instruction. ELD is required course of study for English learner students, and instruction is provided based on their proficiency level and their needs. It is the students' needs that determine the number of minutes necessary to make progress towards English proficiency. So student need must always, always, always drive what instruction is provided. As Pam previously noted earlier on, she said how much strategic, precious, focused time is necessary to ensure students at their respective proficiency levels are making progress towards English language proficiency. To share an example about the process some LEAs go through, Many local educational agencies conduct needs assessments that include students, teachers, and families, as well as all available formative and outcome data to understand the instructional needs of English learner students and to plan instructional programs and what other materials are needed. Next slide, please. The ELA ELD framework is a tremendous resource. But in addition to that, we also have the CDE maintains a webpage to assist educators who are so glad to hear in the room today, our administrators who are in the room, and all local educational agencies and schools with designated and integrated ELD. That webpage is the CDE's ELD standards webpage, and it serves as a hub for all things ELD and includes resources such as the 2012 California ELD standards, integrated and designated resources, the ELD video series, professional learning, and other instructional resources that are available for free today on the CDE webpage. Of note, I just want to mention the ELD video series features teachers delivering integrated and designated ELD instruction to English learner students. You see teachers use the ELD standards to design intentional and purposeful ELD instruction that supports English learners to learn English and to apply academic use of English through various contexts and various content areas. It's really a must-see for all of our teachers. Thank you again for joining, and I'll now turn it back over to Bonnie.
Thank you, GQ. Appreciate that. All the resources and answering those FAQ questions. And Pam, thank you for all of the information regarding integrated and designated. We had a lot of great questions and Q&A that have been answered. And I just want to put a plug in for that foundational skills paper that Pam talked about. It is an exceptional paper with great examples, and I would say that you should definitely download it and use it. And now, without further ado, I want to turn it back over to Dr. Hallie Yap, again, one of the authors of the ELA ELD Framework. And Dr. Yap, I have a question for you. And that question is, the framework has a lot in it, a lot of great information. It can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming, though, when you're looking at this huge document. So in order to manage all of the information, what suggestions do you have for entry points?
Well, thank you, Dr. Garcia. That's a really terrific question. And of course, one we've thought about a great deal, and it was daunting to write, let alone ask all of California's educators and other interested parties to read it. And as Pam noted earlier, we don't expect people to pick it up and read it from cover to cover. Those of you joining us today, if you participated in any of our previous webinars in this series, then you know we create guidance documents related to the topic under discussion, because we're excited to share what's in the framework and we want to help you find what is there. In the current document, so Bonnie is going to share her screen. We have a guidance document for comprehensive ELD instruction. And as she shares her screen, you'll see when we provide you with the link, this is a document you'll see. It is organized by the framework chapters. And if you look at the topics within those chapters, you may find something of interest. And in particular, of course, it's related to today's discussion. So notice that if you are interested, for example, in learning more about the ELD standards, if you could scroll backwards, there you go. Thank you, Bonnie. You could click on chapter 1 if you scroll here, because this provides information about how the standards are organized, what the nature of them is, what the intent is, and so forth. So if you just want that broader overview, go to this chapter in the framework to see this. If you're interested, if you're a classroom teacher, I would urge you to go to the chapter that corresponds to your grade level and then look at the topics within that grade level and go to one of those page numbers. So you would click on the link for that chapter, and then you would go to the page number that is of interest. Let's say you're interested in assessment. You want to know how EL identified students are assessed. Click on the link for chapter 8. And here we have it on the screen here. You would click on that link, look at the subtopics, and scroll to the corresponding page. Whoever you are, whatever your role is in educating California's youth, we are certain that you will find something that is relevant to your interests here in the framework. So thank you. If you can see, as Bonnie is scrolling through this, there are lots of other resource links that we include in this document for you. Now, Bonnie, if you wouldn't mind going back and showing the other link that we have, we're going to encourage you to take advantage of the next few minutes just to explore a bit. And we invite you to share your reactions on our Padlet. We've created this Padlet for you. We will share a link in a moment. Here, you can click on the plus sign on the bottom right of the wall to create a note for posting. Please, as you are exploring this guidance document, which takes you into different aspects of the framework, make a comment. Share anything that resonates with you, excites you, or that you wish all educators knew. Help out your peers here in the room and those who will look at this later. Make a comment, and please note the page number where you saw that interesting table, interesting information, a super vignette, whatever you see that you think would be helpful or interesting, or for whatever reason, it's up to you. Make a comment and share that here. And of course, you may continue to put questions in the Q&A feature of our Zoom session here. Let's get started. We'll share, we're sharing those two links, and we will also keep a slide on the screen for the next 5 minutes probably, so that you can go into the document and then also go into the Padlet. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. I see so many wonderful comments on the Padlet. Not only were people sharing specific page numbers, I appreciated the person who talked about the motivation section in the TK chapter. That's crucial to be thinking about. Several others of you called out specific pages. Some of you found the framing questions and called those out. And then I see just lots of other things that were going on in your brains as you were pondering this topic. Crucial at this point was that we got you into the framework. We hope that you see, oh my goodness, there's a lot here of potential value to you, and that you will use this document as a springboard for looking at more information within the framework. So thank you for joining us today. And now back to you, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. And as I'm going to get this set up, appreciate that, Dr. Yap. I am now going to bring in and introduce our very own Alicia Ramirez Moreno, she's the director of the Multilingual Division at the California Department of Education. And Alicia, I have a question for you too. And that is, why is multilingual education so important? And how is the Department of Education supporting schools and districts to successfully implement it?
Thank you, Bonnie, and good afternoon. And Bonnie, I think you might have the capacity to let my camera start, but I'm unable to start it myself. It's certainly an honor to be here today and contribute to conversations around literacy and language development to truly help fulfill the vision for a multilingual California through the lens of the ELA ELD framework. I think this is especially personal for me because 2 generations ago, there was a teacher in a faraway state who, from my perspective, stole my inheritance by shaming my grandmother into believing that hers was not the language of school. The linguistic and cultural assets that would have been passed down inherently were siphoned from my family's experience. Thus, growing up in a household where English was a primary language, but from a larger family in which both English and Spanish were spoken, I can attest to the sense of longing that results from generational language loss. I recall with some regret how, as a child, I missed out on half of the gifts that my grandmother had to offer. Those gaps in understanding while I listened to her talk to her hermanas and her comadres over the phone, or the secret language that was exchanged between her and her daughters. I recall also the feeling of uncertainty in finding my place of cultural belonging. Developing bilingualism and biliteracy has been a journey of reclamation for me, and I was greatly privileged to have access to a bilingual education program as a California public school child, a student in California public schools. It was in that program where my grandmother's home language was elevated, celebrated, and leveraged to achieve deeper learning. And that experience makes California's effort to increase access to multilingual learning opportunities resonate so powerfully for me. The CDE envisions bilingual and biliteracy capacity for all the state's children and youth, and bilingualism, biliteracy is part of Superintendent Thurmond's larger initiative to transform California schools. As a student, California bilingual classrooms were a place where I grew my appreciation for language and culture and learned the value of empathy. But of course, empathy is but one benefit of multilingualism. If we can please proceed into the next slide. We know that multilingualism is associated with various cognitive, educational, economic, and social-cultural benefits, with strengthened student and familial experience, but also greatly benefit our communities socially and economically. In California, about 60% of children ages 0 to 5 speak a language other than English at home. And in fact, in California, we have about a quarter of the entire country's English learner students. Approximately 19% of students in California specifically are classified as English learners. And these students bring the gift of home language and home cultures to school as they grow their language and literacy skills in English, and hopefully in languages in addition to English. The graphic from the U.S. Department of Education Office of English Language Acquisition highlights these benefits. The link to this graphic is available in the chat, or it will be shortly. And further, USED's Raise the Bar, Lead the World initiative in part calls for the creation of pathways to global engagement, including providing every student with a pathway to multilingualism. Capitalizing on the home language and providing opportunities to develop it to high levels of proficiency along with English, it's good for children and it's also good for our state. The ELA ELD Framework is an essential resource in our endeavor to get there. If you can proceed to the next slide, please. California's English Learner or EL Roadmap policy, approved unanimously in 2017 by the State Board of Education, is a foundational blueprint that enhances the ELA ELD framework. They work in tandem as companions, and it elaborates on the vision for a multilingual California where English learner students fully and meaningfully access and participate in a 21st century education, resulting in high levels of English proficiency, mastery of grade level standards, and opportunities to develop proficiency in multiple languages. 2 of the 4 principles in particular speak to the importance of multilingual learning opportunities. Principle 1, assets-oriented and needs-responsive schools, articulates that the various languages and cultures that English learner students bring to their education are assets for their own learning. And Principle 2, intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access, call forth the importance of intellectually rich, standards-based curriculum, and home language as a means to access subject matter content, as well as to serve as a foundation for developing English. In California classrooms, this could take shape via a multitude of dual language learning models, and I'll run through just a few. Dual language immersion or two-way immersion is language learning and academic instruction for native speakers of English and native speakers of another language. The goals of dual language immersion are language proficiency and academic achievement in students' first and second language, and cross-cultural understanding, which I know is so important to me as a child. Transitional bilingual provides instruction for English learner students utilizing English and students' native language for literacy and academic instruction, with the goals of language proficiency and academic achievement in English. Students typically transition from to English only instruction by around 3rd grade. Developmental bilingual provides instruction for English learner students utilizing English and the student's native language for literacy and academic instruction, with the goals of language proficiency and academic achievement in students' first and second languages. One-way immersion provides instruction for English and other languages for non-speakers of the other language, with the goals of language proficiency and academic in English and the other language and cross-cultural understanding. Heritage language or indigenous language provides instruction in English and another language for non-English speakers or students with limited literacy skills in their first language. Indigenous language programs support endangered minority languages in which students may have limited receptive or possibly no productive skills. Both programs often serve American Indian students. Flex or foreign language elementary experience provides instruction for non-native speakers of the target language with the goals of exposure, enrichment, and language experience. And this is typically during a designated period of the day or an after-school program, sometimes a few times a week, providing basic exposure to a language, not resulting necessarily in biliteracy. Less or foreign language in elementary schools provides instruction for non-native speakers of the target language during a designated period of the school day or an after-school program dedicated to language study. And native courses are courses of language study designed for native speakers of the target language. Each of these program approaches should be grounded in California EL Roadmap policy, which emphasizes the importance of celebrating home language and providing students with opportunities to develop proficiency in the home language alongside English. And for more information on these programs, you can visit our website, but also you can see the EL Roadmap and the guidance document, which are going to be populated in the chat. With support of Superintendent Thurmond and through various investments such as the Dual Language Immersion Grant Program, California's dual language learning opportunities are on the rise, with approaching 1,300 schools offering one or more multilingual programs across nearly 300 districts, helping California get closer to achieving the goals outlined in Global California 2030. Of course, the purpose of using the ELA ELD framework effectively in multilingual programs is to ensure that EL students have the opportunity to capitalize and build on the asset of the home language and have access to the types of multilingual programs that have helped students like me reclaim our heritage languages. As dual language programs continue to grow, adherence to the guidance in the ELA ELD framework is important for statewide coherence and consistency in language and literacy and biliteracy instruction for all California students. I will now pass to Gina Garcia-Smith, who will highlight answers to some frequently asked questions related to implementation of the ELA ELD framework in the context of multilingual programs. Gina?
Thank you, Alicia. I would like to share a selection of FAQs that we in the Multilingual Support Division often receive regarding multilingual programs. The first FAQ is, what are the criteria for students to be in a dual language immersion program? There are no specific criteria for students except for parental choice. So that means that all students, including students classified as English learners and students with disabilities, are eligible to enroll in dual language immersion programs. Next slide, please. The next FAQ is, can you implement a dual language immersion program with a school population of 96% Spanish speakers? No, the ideal ratio for English learners versus English speakers is 50-50, but to stay within the program design, the recommendation of many practitioners is that the ratio should never go below 33% for either language group. A school may, however, under certain circumstances, choose to select a developmental bilingual or maintenance or heritage language model for developing bilingualism with this population. Next, please. The next FAQ is, do dual language programs still have to provide integrated and designated ELD? This is an easy one. Yes. Students who are classified as English learners must still receive both integrated and designated ELD, even if they are enrolled in a dual language program. Like Pam said, they're not optional. Next slide, please. The final FAQ I would like to share is, do English learners get enough English instruction in a 90-10 model? In a 90-10 dual language model, 90% of instruction is in the target language, while 10% is in English when the program begins, typically in kindergarten. In a 90-10 model, the amount of the target language decreases yearly as English increases until there is about a 50-50 balance for the languages, generally in grades 4 through 6. In a 90-10 model, English time must be carefully defined and implemented. High-quality curriculum and instruction are essential. Research shows that when programs are fully implemented according to the program design, English learners in 90-10 models score as well or better than their peers in programs, in English-only programs on English tests. For more information on this research, please see the Dual Language Education by Catherine Lindholm-Leary, which was published in 2001 by Multilingual Matters. Next slide, please. Finally, here are the links to the resources that Alicia Moreno Ramirez and I shared today. They are the U.S. Department of Education, or ED, Benefits of Multilingualism infographic, the CDE English Learner Roadmap webpage, the CDE Multilingual Education webpage, where you can find the FAQs that I shared as well as others, the Global California 2030 report, which sets goals to expand multilingualism in California, the ED Raise the Bar, Lead the World webpage, and the Center for Applied Linguistics two-way immersion webpage. All of these links are available in the chat. Thank you very much. If you have any questions about multilingual programs, please reach out to the CDE Multilingual Support Division by email at msd@cde.ca.gov. And next, I will hand it back over to Dr. Barney Garcia to close us out. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Gina. So much great information and resources shared. I did put in the chat all of the links that you see here. I also put in the chat information regarding the LPAC, a resource for the interim, and then also the foundational skills document that Dr. Sweetcher wrote. So we're going to be closing next steps. But before we close, we're going to do some Q&A. And I want to go ahead and remind everyone that we have another amazing session on December 12th on language development, and we do hope to see you there. The recordings are going to be available on our CDE Facebook page as soon as we're done. And then as soon as we're done with editing and all of that good stuff, we will share the edited versions of our accessible versions of our PowerPoint, our video, and our documents, and that will all be shared out. So I will put the link for the feedback in the chat in just a second. And I'm going to ask our panelists if they saw any questions that they want to answer from the Q&A while I grab the survey here. Is there, Pam, there were a lot of questions regarding designated and integrated. One specifically I remember asked, when is this designated time? How does it happen in Tier 1 instruction in the elementary years? So I don't know if that is a question that maybe you can answer.
Sure. I mean, the guidance and the framework that we provided assumes that teachers in the elementary grades are working collaboratively. For example, all first grade teachers, like when I was a first grade teacher, I collaborated with the other first grade teachers at my school, and we shared students basically. And so for designated ELD, the guidance in the framework is for student teachers in that situation to share students. One teacher might take EL students at the emerging level of English language proficiency. Another teacher might take students at the expanding level of English language proficiency. And it's just a short period of time. It's just a little bit of time each day so that you can provide that really specific targeted support. And I've seen this happen very successfully across the state. A lot of schools are doing it. It does take coordination. So, you know, there's that. But collaboration is always the gold standard, right? In other instances, say you're a fifth grade teacher, maybe you have 2 EL identified students in your class, and maybe another teacher has one. Or so in that instance, you might actually provide that designated ELD time, that instruction, to those students during the school day, where you pull them aside and you give some really targeted, specific, strategic, specialized instruction. So really, that's why earlier I said there's not really a one size fits all answer to that question, because it depends on your students. And this is really about looking at what your students' strengths are and what their progress has been along the ELD continuum, and working with your colleagues to figure out how best to respond to the students that are in front of you.
I have one more question for you, Pam.
Great.
And that is, could you comment on the role of integrated and designated ELD as a part of foundational skills instruction?
Yes. So I kind of spoke about that really quickly because I was over my time. But the guidance in the framework that we provided, and we talked a lot about this in the development of the framework. And remember, the development of the framework was a statewide effort. We had a large advisory committee. We were working with the State Board of Education. We got lots of feedback across the state. And so we really wanted to represent what Californians wanted. And so the guidance that was decided in Chapter 2 of the ELA ELD Framework is that foundational skills instruction, the systematic, explicit instruction, evidence-based instruction, needs to happen in ELA. And the example that I gave was early grades, but this applies across the board. It happens during ELA time, and integrated ELD needs to be provided. And the way we provide integrated ELD is by getting to know a little bit more about our students. What is their English language proficiency? What foundational skills do they have in their home language? Where are they in their foundational skills in English? And so Chapter 6 of the ELD Standards publication actually provides charts and guidance on how to ask yourself those questions. And in the framework, of course, we also address that in all chapters. Designated ELD is not really the time to provide systematic and explicit foundational skills instruction, with a few exceptions.
Thank you so much, Pam. Back to you, Bonnie.
Yes, thank you, Pam. I feel like we could spend a lot more time on designated and integrated. It's really interesting too. So thank you for sharing. So I did put the survey in the chat. There is a question on there that's asking you if you've attended session 1 or session 2 or neither, just so we can get some feedback and understanding of who's attending our sessions. And also, if you're filling it out, us understanding that you probably attended session 3. So we appreciate that. And all the feedback that we get is really important. So thank you. And here is our contact information, Nancy and I. We definitely love to hear from the field. So feel free to email or call us. And that brings us to an end for today. Thank you for being with us. And we look forward. Thank you, GQ. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Alicia. And behind the scenes, you don't see the other people who are helping us out, but we also have Kyle Perry from Seaford, and we have TSD folks here also supporting us. So, and of course, thank you to my co-director, Nancy Brennelson, and to the 2 other co-authors of the framework, Dr. Yop and Dr. Speecher.